social care is very front of mind when you've got a 90-year-old mother-in-law, so it's a great way to spend a Friday afternoon because she loves movies and so do I, so there you go. So we've just had a great 1.5 days here, actually bringing together quite a lot of the product sustainability initiatives like the Sustainability Consortium, Grenelle in France, the Commission, JRC and PCF World Forum, a whole bunch of people, about 12 initiatives, and we've really, I feel like we've really started to make some traction on bringing some of this stuff together, starting to share the evidence, starting to understand what the key priorities are. And what I really want to talk to you today is about some of the work we've done in the UK, give you some background to that, talk about some of the companies we've involved, talk about some of the initial findings, and talk really about some of the more exciting stuff that we're getting into now. So having done a lot of the hotspots analysis across 2 sectors in the UK, we're now into that sort of very interesting field, which is trying to understand what to do about these hotspots with our industry partners and with our government partners. So what is the PSF? It's very collaborative. It is extraordinary the amount of energy we get in our meetings, and very often we overrun because of that energy. It involves all of the major UK-based retailers in grocery and home improvement, which are our 2 dominant sectors that we're looking at. I'll explain why in a minute. It includes most of the major food and drink manufacturers. It includes NGOs like WWF, Friends of the Earth, Forum for the Future. So our conversations are always lively, always challenging. It includes governments, academics, and other representative organisations. The forum is very pre-competitive. So what we're trying to do with the forum is point out where the problems are, where the potential solutions might be, and then leave it to the competitive market to tackle those solutions and implement them. It is quantifiable, and it's all about providing evidence. That's interesting. That's lost a bit like Peter's slide, lost a bit of the text there. So we are trying to quantify this stuff. It is using a life cycle approach, but we are also, as the next slide says there, the next piece of text there says, it's very pragmatic. And what our corporate partners in particular said to us was, at the start of this process, do not try and do this, do not try and do a life cycle study for every single product we're talking about, because in the 2 sectors in which we're operating in within the forum, we're talking about 150,000 products. You can't do that. We'll be doing life cycle studies until the end of the century. So what we've tried to do is get ourselves to a point where we have enough of an answer that they feel they can make an informed business decision on and actually take action. As I said, it's about life cycle impacts, so it includes the sourcing of raw materials, manufacture, transport, and end of life. Consumer use, I might come back to later if I've got time. It is deeply challenging. The number of really good or even moderately good use phase base case scenarios on how products are used and the environmental impacts that arise are very, very small. And this is a big challenge. I think we heard this in the last couple of days at the round table for everyone. It's about environmental. So we're just talking about environmental sustainability, and actually we're just interested in 5 impact categories. We're interested in greenhouse gas emissions, interested in energy, both in terms of embodied energy and energy in use for some products. We're interested in both operational and embodied water use, so we use water footprinting methodology to do that. And we're interested in waste, so product life cycle waste. And I think one of the methodological challenges we've had with waste is that we talk in life cycle assessment about end of life impacts, and we tend to focus on waste there. What we found in the grocery side, looking at life cycle studies on grocery products, was that end of life accounted for about 1% of product life cycle impacts. But actually, when we started getting under the skin of that and looking at waste arisings throughout the life cycle, it's a lot more than 1%. And it's about everyday products, the stuff that you and I use. It's about the stuff that we eat, the stuff that we drink, the stuff we use in our showers, the stuff we use to clean our homes. And we are looking at hotspots. We've just done some hotspots work actually on textiles and clothing, which has proved very interesting, because one of the things we do at WRAP is run the Sustainable Clothing Action Plan for the UK governments. So we have a very simple vision. It's about making these products, designing them more resource efficiently to minimise environmental impact, maximise environmental benefit. And we also try to take into account resource availability. So we talked a lot in the last couple of days about product sustainability version 2. And what we mean by that is, what do we need to do if we look forward to 2050 and we have all the challenges there around resource use and waste and water and climate change and so on? What is the next steps we have to take? What are the challenges we face when we take that longer term view on product sustainability? And we also focus very much as well looking at the whole sustainable consumption element to this. So unsurprisingly, a lot of the products we look at, a lot of the hotspots sit in the use phase. So we have to find the best way, either directly or through our members, of helping consumers to understand and address these impacts. So we're talking in some cases about some quite significant behaviour change issues. We have sort of two key threads of principal areas of activity, really. I've talked about the 5 impact metrics that we work on. I've talked about the fact that we prioritise our work at the moment on grocery and home improvement products, that we've tended to focus largely on this notion of life cycle impact or hotspots analysis. We're now getting to this point where we are taking a look at those hotspots that we've identified across grocery and home improvement and really understanding the reduction opportunities that are available to address them. And unsurprisingly, for one hotspot, for example, you may find you have 7, 8, 9, 10 different potential solutions. And the challenge is to figure out which combination of solutions provides you with the optimal impact reduction opportunity. And in the process of doing that, we're trying to understand the savings. We have to understand the economic savings because that's part of the business case with the businesses we work with. They won't do it unless they save money from doing it. And we have to understand the environmental savings potential because they're obviously interested in that, and so are we, and so are the UK governments. We've done some PCR work, and we've spent a bit of time trying to understand how the differences are in different PCR arrangements and different PCR schemes. And we did a survey on that last year, and one of my colleagues, Karen Fisher, I know came to the last PCF forum and talked about the survey that she'd undertaken on our behalf at the time she was working for ERM. And on the implementation side, we're now actually scoping a whole series of what we describe as Pathfinder projects. And this is taking this information, this hotspots information, into real supply chains with the appreciation of the solutions and actually working through those solutions. We're doing that over the course of 18 months to 2 years. So hopefully at the end of that 2 years, we'll start to see some change in those products and the sustainability of those products. To support that, we've been developing a whole series of product category action plans or themed action plans, which we hope will help to focus some of the activity there. We've also developed or are developing a library of reduction opportunities. So those opportunities that we've identified that address those hotspots will be in that library. That will be a fully searchable library, which everyone will have access to early next year. And for those of you that are interested in IT platforms, we use Footprinter, which is a US-based company, Footprinter Inc., and that allows us to store all our research, and that includes a library of all the originating studies that we've used to do the hotspots analysis. And for us, it's our one-stop information hub. It includes all our stuff on emissions factors that we've looked at, water footprint values, those sorts of things. And finally, I guess there are 2 other things that probably differentiate us from a number of other initiatives. We have spent quite a lot of time with the environment profession and with the sectors that we work with, and we've identified some pretty significant skills gaps here. And the challenge that brings to us is that we can do some really good cutting-edge research, but if people can't interpret it or understand it, then we're screwed. So we've put together a skills and development partnership, which includes our colleagues from UNEP CTAC Lifecycle Initiative, and we're actively now working towards figuring out how do we start to get these sorts of lifecycle thinking skills into the industry, into environmental professionals. And just to give you an idea, the environmental professions in the UK looked at life cycle thinking and life cycle analysis as a discipline, as a professional discipline. Less than 10% of the membership had those skills. That's in the people that know this stuff. So that's pretty sobering. And the final thing, which we've talked about a little bit, is the notion of international collaboration, developing this meta-network, a network of networks, where we bring together these product sustainability initiatives so that we can actually start to work together to workload share and to avoid duplication and basically become more efficient and actually get to the sort of level of change and the scale of change that we're all looking for. So the challenge that we faced at the start of this, as I said, 260 product categories across grocery and home improvement. We use GPC as the classification system because AC Nielsen and GfK, which are the 2 principal retailing merchandising classification systems we use in the UK, are based on that. We work at the brick level of GPC, for those that understand that. And what we tried to do is get from the 260 product categories, those 150,000 odd products, down to about 40. And I'll talk a bit about how hotspots analysis has really helped us to do that. And within those 40 product categories, we're not necessarily talking about the whole product life cycle for the products within those product categories. We're talking about the hotspots. So that's something to bear in mind too. So this is like a filter. This is trying to get from a very large and unmanageable number of products to a number of products where we believe action is required because they are either the most highly intensive in terms of impact category work, or because they are such high volume sellers in the UK economy. We started off organising ourselves around GHG as the initial metric. There were some very obvious reasons for that, not least because carbon footprinting studies were a lot more abundant than any of the other studies available for the other metrics we're looking at. And slowly but surely we've added information in on material use, material flows. We found some pretty good data sources for that, so if anyone wants to know them, I can point you at them later over lunch. We've done the water footprinting work, we've started to look at the waste issues, and we've done a fairly significant piece of work on embodied energy in food and drink products, which we did jointly with DEFRA and the University of Warwick. We were interested in doing that piece of work because we wanted to understand embodied energy in food more and its relationship with GHG emissions. DEFRA were interested in doing it because they were interested in food and drink and energy security. So that was two different purposes to that research, but some very interesting findings. I have to say we still have data gaps, and that's something that's a continual challenge, and we are looking to improve the quality of the insight from that. I shared with the group in the last day and a half, we kind of have this hierarchy of need. We talk about data, we talk about information, we talk about knowledge, we talk about insight, and then ultimately we seek to talk about wisdom. And we're trying to get more wisdom into this sort of thinking. And considerations, the biggest challenge we have with this stuff is the volume of data. These are enormous seas of data, so how do we make this visually representative and accessible, and how do we start to summarise this so that people can take action on it? So just to give you an idea of the sort of top-level hotspots, this is the first phase of the hotspots analysis that we did, and this sort of pretty much gives you an idea why we focused on grocery and home improvement products. So this is just looking at the GHG metric, and this is looking at household consumption impacts for products in the UK. And you see there that if you take out all of the products on grocery and home improvement, you're talking about 50% of GHG household consumption impacts. Home improvement products represent nearly 18% of that, but energy-using products represent 14% of that in turn. And when you look at grocery products, they are absolutely dominated by food products at nearly 28%. And we can start to do some interesting things like linking this up and looking at product system solutions. So how do we improve washing machine and dishwasher design of products, and then start looking at things like the detergents, the shower gels and shampoos and so on. And similarly, we can look at the design of refrigeration and the ability to reduce food waste and extend shelf life. So those sorts of things we've been looking at. Just to give you an idea of the sort of hotspots findings in a nutshell, when we looked across the product categories in grocery, the top 30 sort of priority product categories for us when we look at the hotspots represent 60% of food and drink product tonnage. What I mean by that is materials flows. Just over 70% of food and drink GHG emissions, 50% of consumer food waste, which is not surprising given that they're probably the most stable food products that we focus on the most purchased, and 50% of the water footprint. And as I said earlier, when we look at home improvement, electricals on the GHG side dominate at about 80 to 90% of the whole product area, with just 5 electrical products or energy-using products contributing 50% of that. This is a big slide, and I haven't got the time to go into it, but you'll obviously have a chance to look at it. But basically what we've tried to do is to summarise some of the findings from the 35-odd pieces of research we've done. So you see the different product groups on the left-hand side there. You see product sales in millions of tonnes, so this is scaled to UK economy. You see GHG emissions, millions of tonnes CO2e next to that. You see the green water, so this is the rain-fed crop stuff relating to those products, and you see the blue water, so the manufacturing and the raw material blue water, so irrigation, stuff like that there. We have other, I haven't had the time to do this, but we have other columns against this that summarise the energy, embodied energy, consumer food waste and supply chain food waste. So we've done a lot of resource mapping in the UK trying to understand where waste occurs in supply chains, because that's our bread and butter, that's what we do. And for GHG, for electrical products, we've looked at materials and we've looked at GHG and energy use, both in terms of embodied energy in the product and energy in use. And what we found is actually that although the energy in use obviously is significantly higher than the embodied energy, there's a lot to go at in terms of materials and embodied energy. So what we've been looking at is how do we come up with solutions like improving product durability and stuff like that, and modular design in products so we can upgrade and redesign products without necessarily having to destroy them or shred them down in recycling facilities. And then finally, when you look outside of electrical products and you start looking at non-electricals, there are two dominant things in DIY products. So looking at that, there's 62% in terms, this is looking at materials, 62% of the materials outside of energy-using products in the home improvement sector are furniture and furnishings, 28% floor coverings, 32% furniture. Now, what we've also done with this is model this against economic value, so we can start to see when we tackle these material issues and we make ourselves more efficient and we look at reuse and refurbishment and repair and things like that, we can actually start to build the business case for tackling some of these products too. We have a research program there. You'll see the top three there. We continue to do a lot of work on the hotspots, so we have one on waste and resources, one on GHG and energy, one on water. We're doing a piece of work on biodiversity impacts of products, which is proving to be probably the most challenging thing we've done yet, probably no surprise to any of you. And we're doing some impact reduction work, which I've mentioned already, and the pathfinders. We're also looking at some work on how do we translate the impacts of our work in the business-to-business market, so not just focusing on the consumption impacts in households anymore, but starting to look at what we're doing and how that affects the B2B market. And similarly, for the home improvement side of things, we're doing a lot of work on strategies for energy-using and water-using products as well. And this is really just the sort of step in the journey. So we've done the hotspots analysis work. We continue to fill the data gaps there. We're doing now the practical impact reduction work. We've developed the footprint platform that's now about to be shared with the members of the forum. We're doing the Pathfinder projects. We're kicking those off later in the year. And we increasingly, and particularly out of the last few days, we're doing some collaborative projects with other product sustainability initiatives like TSC and Grinnell and others as well, just thinking about that in beer, beverage industry, environment roundtable. And we see really ourselves sort of beyond that as being the enabling hub for a lot of activity, and not just for voluntary action by industry, but actually providing good evidence for policymakers too. I'll stop there.